This is the coolest show brought to you by Hip Hop Caucuses. Think 100%.
It's the coolest show you know, keep the culture connected. It's the coolest show you know, in your ear, yeah, respected. Expert level information, entertainment, education. Rev Yearwood got you covered as you hit your destination. Climate rules everything around me. Cream. For those who lost focus, close your eyes and just dream. Open your third eye, now the world is your off. Coolest show you know, it's the Hip Hop Caucus.
Welcome back to the coolest show. I'm your host, Rev Yearwood, and we are still recording in my home state of Louisiana. We are here. Actually, I'm here with someone who will explain where we're here. I think that's the best way. I'm with the Banner sisters, Joe and Joy Banner. How y'all doing?
Doing good.
So who wants to start? I'm gonna skip my first question because I think it's important for people to know where we are. So who wants to say where we are?
I'll say it. We are at Woodland Plantation, which is the originating site of the 1811 slave revolt, and which in January of 1811.
For those who listen, that's Joy.
Our voices sound just alike anyway.
Also, if you're not listening, they're also twins. That's why.
But the Charles Delon was the leader of the rebellion, and for 2 years planned to fight for his freedom and to strategize with other enslaved men and women to make their move in a cold January to fight for their freedom. And it started right here at this house, possibly in this room. And after the rebellion was put down, Charles Delon was brought back to the site and was executed.
Joe?
And we're in St. John the Baptist Parish. We're on the east bank of the river right now, the Mississippi River. We actually live on the west bank of the Mississippi River as a descendant community. But this is a very old parish, one of the first ones that was started right after New Orleans. So I think we made our tricentennial. We made our tricentennial a couple years after New Orleans. It's been a corridor through I think for the Creole culture and many other cultures from our area, from the river to New Orleans. So we have a lot of influence in New Orleans as well. The community is deeply rooted. Many different cultures are here, but everyone has, I think, a really deep connection to the land and to the river.
Joy, for folks who don't know what a big house is on a plantation, they may be listening, what is a big house?
So the big house on a plantation, that's so important to distinguish. So when we hear the word plantation, people automatically think as the mansion, literally the big house that you see associated with plantations as the plantation. But a plantation is actually, it's a corporation. It's a complex of buildings that support the fields, the work, the labor, and whatever crop is being harvested for the massive wealth and livelihood of the owning family, the enslaving family. And of course, the enslaving family lives in the big house, and people that are enslaved who live in the big house, the domestics, their primary role is to take care of the family. While the other people that are enslaved may be out in the field, may be working around in other buildings. So it really is, it's a structure of different buildings with organization, with different roles, but it's a complex of buildings all for the perpetuation of wealth for the enslaving people.
Could you two have been sitting here 200 years ago? 200 years ago. Could you have been sitting as comfortably as you are now on this couch without permission?
Oh, I mean,
Most likely
absolutely
no.
not. Absolutely not.
I don't think you could ever
Absolutely
be
not.
comfortable. First of all, would you even be sitting? But and you'd have to ask someone permission if you were to sit because you're not working, and that would be seen as you being lazy, or maybe even punishment can even result from that. So
It's money lost.
Yeah,
if they
money
see
lost.
You sitting, and especially sitting on their sofa. Oh no, you just didn't broke a whole bunch of rules.
right.
Well, I asked that question, lead off with this whole process, because folks who are listening, not seeing, you two are both Black women. who are sitting on the couch. Even more so than sitting on the couch, you now own the house.
Yes.
Amazing. Tell us
Thank
that
you.
story.
So we decided, and this was a decision. We knew the house what had been, it was for sale. We also knew that at the time there was a museum being run, but it was not being sustained. And so Joe and I had talked about it before because we knew how important this house is. And the last thing that we would want is for this plantation house to be used in a way that diminishes the history or for throwing parties or, God forbid, weddings. And so we had talked about this house really needing someone to kind of step in and protect it. But we already have so much going on with the Descendents Project. We are restoring another plantation house where we actually descend from the inhabitants of that house. So we said, no, our role is to steward it to the people that is going to take care of it. We're like, no, it's too much for us. But then it so happened that the current battle that we are in to protect our own descendant community against this company called Greenfield that wants to construct a grain operation terminal right next to our historic Black community that would dump over 100 tons of pollution on us, 30,000 trucks a year, super Panamax ships coming in that are the massive ships, grain silos that are as tall as the Statue of Liberty. It would run us out of our community. And so there was a partnership formed between the executive director at that time and Greenfield to help keep this place open. And we recognize it as a way of, I saw it as a plantation move to pit two Black descendant communities against each other and using our historic resources against each other. And we decided at that moment, oh, well, if we don't step in and protect this house, it will be used, it will continue, it's at risk for being used that way. And so that's why we decided to buy it.
It was what I liken it to is a carbon credit. So you can destroy one community, one Black community, and think you can put a little bit of money into another community, and now it's all even. So I think that was their point of getting involved, to say, well, it doesn't matter. You're gone, but here we are,
right.
saving you, as if you can replace communities with each other. So we really. It was nasty, I think, really horrible to have the history of this home brought into the situation that we're in and being utilized as a pawn and a game to continue to harm Black bodies.
So I want to get further into that conversation because that actually connects to both the issue what you now have moved into a lot, which is around the issue of stopping bad things that come from the industry, fighting climate change, trying to reduce our use on plastics. I'm going to get to all of that. But I just wanted to say to you both that when I've obviously known you before you bought this, and if nobody officially says thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you for just being just good stewards. Because I know you're telling the story, and for folks who don't know, the story we're talking about is that the largest slave revolt uprising happened literally in this room that we're in now and on the steps outside. And that was in the 1811. And we're talking about someone who was a descendant from Haiti, who led that, which is a strong tie for folks who don't know Louisiana, for our own ability to be free in this country. And they literally, a lot of them gave their lives. And then in many cases, unfortunately, were mutilated and then parts of their bodies literally brought back to this property to show. So I know that those ancestors are saying thank you as well in that process.
We hope so. We feel very honored that they chose us. They strategized. I mean, these are strategists that we're talking about for the rebellion, and I think they strategized to make sure that we would steward this place. But I feel very honored that they chose us, and because our interest is we want every Black American to feel like this is their space. So, and that's our biggest. It's not for Joe and Joy. It's not the Descendants Project. I want any person, any descendant of slavery to walk in here and just feel free, to feel all the feelings, and whatever you feel, however you want to feel it and experience this history. We want to have some sense and some space of peace in everything that this house represents.
So you mentioned they strategize, so that goes to my original question, and I'll start with you, Joy, because you're twins. Obviously, you came in at the same time, which is still different. You have your own identities, your own people. Who is Joy Banner?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Joy Banner is a person who is deeply committed to family and community. That is my greatest source of joy. That is the big love of my life. I am a person who enjoys a challenge. I don't run away from challenges. I try to always consider the impact that I'm having and the impact that I could have, and especially on this generation that is coming up behind us. I think they're going to be the ones who truly, are faced with saving the world. So more lately, I've been thinking about what am I doing to prepare to lay the way for them. But honestly, I just want people to live in. I want people to have happiness and have joy, especially for the Black community with so much harsh labor tied to us. I want us to be able to relax, to be able to envision a future that doesn't have us as a commodity, right? And it's just to be really untethered from those chains of extraction, right? And always having to prove ourselves. And so to just have spaces of peace for people. That's really what I want. I'm happy doing like the most simple things. We sit out in the yard and eat sunflower seeds, and I'm happy. There may or may not be beer involved. It doesn't even matter sometimes. But it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot at all to make me happy.
I did ask this earlier. Who's the older twin?
I am.
I should ask you for. Well, there you go. You went first, but there you go.
For a change.
For a change. Well, same question. Who is Joe Banner?
That's a good question, and I probably need to ask that of myself once a week in some ways, because I do think it evolves. But for the main part, I am a person who really appreciates connecting with other people, connecting with nature. I love being outdoors. I love seeing flowers and animals and birds. I really think I know I connect spiritually to God, my higher power, and all the spirits and energy by being outside, not doors. And I really feel that now as our work in environmental justice continues. I go to church once a week in a building, but I feel like now my church is outside. So I'm now really connecting our earth as a temple, not just a temple inside of earth, but earth is a temple. And I'm appreciating that, and I'm loving it. I'm falling in love with earth again. I thought I loved her and it before, but now I feel like I'm really in love with everything around me. Well, all that's good. So it's figuring that out or enjoying that. I also, again, I'm not. Sometimes people can be very transactional, but for me, it's always about the relationship that happens with those transactions. So it's very important for me to feel connection and to feel like I'm not alone. And yes, we may have an end goal, but if I don't feel like we're there together, I feel like we've lost out. So I always just try to really form connections with people, whatever process I'm going through. I'm also stubborn, so sometimes it may be hard for me to know what I want, but when I want something, I am just dead set on that. It's hard to just take me off of that path. So yeah, and it could be a bad thing, but for the most part, for where we are right now, I think that being stubborn and determined and feeling something, knowing something called me, feeling called, and having the determination to make it happen is why we're here as the Descendents Project.
Well, you have also made history on the Coolest Show. You are our first twins on the
And we'll always be a coolest, no matter who come after us.
No matter we
I feel like
got.
we should get a T-shirt.
Yeah, we should get
Coolest twins.
Coolest twins. That it might be a little brand thing going on in that process. Who would you say, to anyone you can answer, who would you say is your community?
Right now, well, having location, before my community was very local, and it still is very local. But now with working in the United Nations space and traveling more internationally and connecting with people in different organizations, different communities around the world, I am feeling my community outside of just this where we are right now. In a community I feel are a lot of other frontline, fence line communities who are suffering with the same type of pollution issues, environmental justice issues, environmental racism issues. I can tell my story about what's happening to us here in Cantor Alley and hear from someone in Colombia who's going through the exact same thing, the exact same tactics being used. Or where we're in a room together and maybe we can't understand each other, we may need a translator, but as we are intervening, our interventions sound almost exactly the same, except for, of course, some cultural differences, but everyone sounds, you're saying the same story. So I really am understanding that connection too, and we have a lot of beautiful things around this world that we connect to, but a lot of issues that we need to face that also keeps us connected.
Well, let me stay here with you on that one then. What is unique about that oppression? Now that you've kind of, as you are broadening, right, which is beautiful, your community is broadening. It is no longer St. James, St. John's, Louisiana. And obviously, y'all both went to school in Louisiana, and so this has been your home, your community. But now as you're doing this work and you're beginning to travel, literally travel the globe, you just mentioned you have folks who are in Colombia and Peru and so Africa, Nigeria. You're now seeing this. What's unique? What's unique in that struggle, particularly around the climate crisis?
You mean for our area in Louisiana or just all over?
Yeah, well, just in how you're engaging. I know we just were just recently in Ottawa, right? For instance, doing the plastics treaty.
Right.
We're over in, I believe, was it Nigeria for the one, but the INC?
Nairobi, yes.
Nairobi?
Right.
In Kenya?
Kenya.
So I'm saying, and people are coming there, but you're hearing the same thing. What's unique about that? And when I mean unique meaning your story of Cantor Alley is then you're hearing is the same story as somebody in Kenya. It's the same story as somebody in Korea. It's the same story as somebody what's the common denominator?
Money.
Yeah, colonization.
Capitalism.
Racism. It's just the power, in many cases, I think, for sure in our case, but around is enslavement. It's what happened during slavery, and that the system that's still just chugging along in so many different areas of the world. So we see that. But again, it's also two companies that come in, rich people who see communities and it's about extraction. So it's what can I take? What can I take from this soil? It's beautiful, let me just plow it down because I can make money. So just this absolute ignoring or wanting to capture everything about the air, just suck the soul out of it. So I keep hearing that you just take whatever you can take, you disregard nature, you disregard people, you disregard natural order, and you trash it. So it's
sacrifice.
Yeah, it's sacrifice. Absolutely, it's who can be sacrificed.
Joy, tell people who don't know the history of turning plantations into plant spaces. What is that? They may not know that they are those same people who are extractive, as your sister just mentioned, who are now going to the same places like this, former plantation sites, and are looking to build industry. One that's sinister evil, but tell us what that is.
So if we think about the plantation system, and it really is about how do we get the cheapest labor for the most profit? and who's going to fight back the least? Where do we have the most opportunity to go in? And, for us in a modern day term, we call it, that maximize the shareholder value. I'm a recovering business professor. So as someone who had a lot of business school education, it was all about that value and the shareholder. And it's like if I think it's an attitude of conquest, of colonization, of manifest destiny. If you're not strong enough to, stand up against us, then I guess God didn't want it for you. He's blessed us and he's punished you. But when we think about the plantation system, and we look at the sugarcane fields around us and they look very green and it's very agricultural, and we overlook the fact that that is industry, right? In order to get to the sugarcane fields, in order to have that commerce, the natural landscape of Louisiana had to be completely destroyed. So millions of acres of cypress, of wood, of forested area was cleared by enslaved labor, to set up these historic corporations. That's what plantations are. The framework for a minimal amount of families to continue to get wealthy and continue getting wealthy. And so what we end up with in, the 20th century is these families, very few families, very few people in the family at times that own thousands of acres. So if you are a corporation trying to set up shop, you have the Mississippi River, so it makes the, the riverfront and the acreage valuable as commerce. But what the real benefit is that you have already cleared land. And so we think about development, there's the difference between a greenfield and a brownfield. A greenfield site means it's turnkey. It's developed, you're ready to hand over the keys to the land, and someone can start building, their development. And so what we had was thousands of acres of turnkey sites, and you only had to negotiate with a handful of people who already were in a economic, model of trying to get as much top dollar for their land. And so the descendants of plantation owners sold their land, and then our Black descendant communities that live around those plantations are now on the fence line of those plants.
Wow. What is the Descendents Project?
The Descendants Project is a nonprofit organization based in Wallace and St. John the Baptist Parish. We focus on preserving the culture and the heritage of the enslaved Africans who we descend from. In addition to preservation of our culture, we're also ensuring the future for descendants by focusing on environmental justice issues, environmental racism, calling out systemic problems that have been harming us for so long, and also attacking the system however we can. So we utilize litigation, we utilize media, we utilize whatever we can to dismantle the system of slavery that has continued to harm Black communities. We're also looking and utilizing what we have, the assets that we have, but also trying to incorporate vision and different ideas, bring more happiness to our area, and connecting with our community in order to bring them the happiness that they deserve.
I know y'all want to do a different type of environmental movement, right? I know when we first met some years back, how you were doing it at your other location, at the cafe, and other places. You were looking at this a little differently. We had the grain facility and obviously petrochemicals. Tell us that connection, because you were also using the Descendents Project as a way to help a new environmental movement kind of see itself. Explain that. Anyone of you?
Well, and the environmental movement helped us see ourselves differently as well too, in a wonderful way. We've always, we are people who love our communities, and I think it starts with love and wanting to preserve that history and that culture and that landscape. And so part of that preservation is protection of our environment. And so we saw that really the work that we do when we talk about centering our community and our quality of life, it starts with the air that we breathe, and the soil that we walk on. And there's so much politics around using the term environmentalism and environment. So I think honestly, for us along the river in Louisiana, we had to get comfortable with, like, yeah, you can be a resident, you can love your community, and that means you love the environment, and there's no shame in saying that you're an environmentalist. And like Black people were always environmentalists. We were the best
Facts.
environmentalists. Right, and like we can lean into that as I really think about our strong West African culture and that relationship to the land and all. But yeah, it became focusing on the land, and Joe talked about the spirituality of it. My faith grew when it became work rooted in environment, and rooted in the creation and what God gave us to celebrate and protect. I felt like the Grinch when his heart grew. I feel like my soul grew to encompass the love that the Lord has of the world He created. That really became distinct to me, and it took me, a fully grown woman to realize, oh, I see, it's all connected in the environment. And that love should be there for the environment. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the way kind of
it
came
definitely
to
does,
this work.
because I know y'all were creating something for me that was connect that. I mean, obviously, we went to the other plantation, right? And you were connecting for me how much, well, obviously the evilness of putting sites on plantation. That's just itself pretty awful. And then obviously, and you should talk about this, the nature of former burial grounds. That's an important strategy.
Yeah. Well, every plantation had a burial ground for the enslaved on its property. So every time that there's a plantation, there's at least one burial ground. Sometimes it can be 2 or 3 on those spaces. And those are sacred sites. These people our ancestors were there, and not on their own free will, just basically given the land that was available to them. And it's the only land that they owned. So those sites are sacred, and we are protecting them. And if industry wants to build on top of that, we're crying out, no, you can't do it. This is our space that deserves to be protected, like any other cemetery that you may think is befitting of a cemetery. So we have been working, and we have worked to just get those spaces honored. And if it's between the cemetery and the plant being built, it's the cemetery, the sacred space, that connection that should win every single time. And that's what we fight for. It's a hard fight because obviously you look at the land and you don't see any of the markers or the place where the typical, in most cases, relics of a cemetery. But that's okay, because we are those relics. We are the representation of the people that's there, and that's enough. And we deserve to we have the right to connect with them in a space that is appropriate and that's also safe for us to be there.
Do you know the people where people were trafficked through the Great Maafa when they were brought here? Do you have any idea of where they may have come from on the continent? Is there some idea of where the group of people who may have ended up in our state, where they may have come from?
Yeah, so in West Africa, in Louisiana, and you can, if you've ever had your DNA analysis, you can see that there is West African, Benin, Senegambia, that region, are they're coming primarily in large part to Louisiana. It was interesting, our dad is from Tennessee, and that's where the Nigerian part of our ancestry, and it's almost like you can see Nigeria, and then my mom's DNA, she's the Louisiana native, it's all like the West African part. So it's beautiful to see and to learn more about our cultures, about our ancestry. But it's also sad because, I mean, really, for when we do a DNA analysis, and there's a lot of, I think that, there's some questions. It's accurate, but it doesn't tell you everything. But like, really, that's all we have to rely on to a certain point is, what somebody says, where somebody says you are from. Because for us, beyond a few generations, and we're really, I think, very blessed to know, our ancestors who were enslaved and have some record of them. But for the large majority of Black Americans, have no idea beyond a couple of generations.
Why is that important, not only for descendants here throughout this country, but also those, obviously, who were robbed from their family in those countries. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how important is it to keep that link going?
I think for me it's important because what we're seeing happening now is this idea that we aren't linked to anything. So these corporations come in, these people come in and say, you need to link to me in order to be worth something. Here is the link you need. So our links have been severed, and now these people who want to exploit us come in and they want to be that link. The more we can grab onto our own links, the harder it is for them to utilize their links to tear us down. So us recognizing that we have so much to who we are. We own so much and we've built so much in this country and made it everything that it is. Our cup is already full. So no one else can come and pour anything else in it because it's overflowing with talent, with possibility, with skill, with so much. We don't need anybody else to fulfill us. And we have to, those links help us recognize that and appreciate that.
And this is where my question is going with that, is that now that you are versed in this climate conversation, you now know that that extractive mentality, that greed that is put here from the pollution and Cancer Alley is now destroying those back on the continent in these countries. They pollute the least and are suffering the most. How does that almost feel in the case that the mentality of killing is now going back across?
Well, I guess we should. I guess we should have expected it, right? Unfortunately, there's so much anti-blackness. There's so much, attacks on Black communities and Black populations, around the world. And, we see in the international, world of strife and everything that's going on. And, I sympathize and, want to uplift any community that's being sacrificed and any hardship that's happening and genocides and all. But on the flip side, I'm like, there is usually not as much attention when Black people are dying and when we're being attacked. And I just feel like it's almost like it's an expectation, right? It's like, well, yeah, like it's just, again, it's a sense of this economy that's built on the backs of the transatlantic slave trade that needed Black communities to be undervalued in order to exploit for money. And we still see it. I think it's still very present and obvious today.
What's disposability? It's the disposability of it all was the single use of it all, where we take something, you buy it, and then after you're done, it's trash. Or you literally, when you buy something, you consider it's trash, and now you got to figure out what to do with it. Because we don't have no absolute value in anything.
Wow.
So we treat people disposable. We don't reuse, we don't foster it and store it and bring it along with you, and it's now connect with that, have this relationship. It's okay, I'm gonna use it up and then I'm gonna put it in the trash and I'm gonna ship it to another country and I won't see it anymore, and that way it's gone. It reminds me of how our ancestors were treated. Then back in the plantation, nobody can see it, it's underground. It's over with, and then now it's going back to our countries like Africa, our people and other countries around the world. Our disposability, we don't store anything, it's just us trash it and get it out of our sight.
Wow.
You kill one set off, and then there's more, like the slave trade. Like you just buy more. You kill some, you buy more. And so I think that's kind of definitely the attitude, like the commerce of it all, that's the world. Black bodies are transactional. I mean, literally, they were transactional, and we still are transactional to a lot of people.
Well, I'm gonna ask the producers if they have some questions, but I can see the shirt. I am my ancestors' wildest imagination, and you can get the coolest twins, but you gotta get that shirt too. You have to get that one as well. I want to ask my producers, because it's such an important conversation. I want them to chime in. We're here on site here at the Woodland Plantation. I do want to ask just about what you about the recycling, disposability. I know y'all have been really also working on the plastics treaty. And I know we just had INC 4, and we're gonna have INC 5 Tell people what that is and how that connects to Cancer Alley.
Right now, the world is convening. Most of the world is convening in order to establish a treaty that would help alleviate the pollution that's caused by plastic. And when we say pollution, we don't mean just the waste management, picking up trash from the beach, although it's important, but addressing the entire life cycle of plastic. At least how we intervene and participate in that process is bringing home or really trying to influence how we consider plastic, from extraction from the ground to the upstream manufacturing of the chemicals that go into the primary polymers of plastic, to its being shipped all around the world and utilized, and also being thrown. And all of the greenhouse emissions that come from that, the climate issues that come from that, the health issues like we have in Cancer Alley, that's all a part of the problem. So I go and I participate as a community member who's on a front line of this and who's suffering so much from cancer and other ailments. But there's also industry that's there. And by industry, I mean oil companies and plastic producers and lobbyists and nonprofit organizations who work in the plastic field. So we're going in there and we are spilling out our guts. We're going in there and we're tired because we're fighting internationally, but we're also so concerned about our communities at home. And to see these industry people go there in their nice suits and no bags under their eyes and glossy brochures and handing it to the country, especially our country, and say, look, there's no problem here. We're just gonna pick up a little trash here, we're gonna recycle it, and it's gonna all go away. So it's been a tough battle, but I'm happy that I'm at least there speaking for our community, because if I wasn't there, the industry is there to speak on our behalf.
Caught them.
Yeah.
Well, and I think an important point as we learned, is that petrochemical is plastic. And
Yeah.
so we're producing, and like me and Joe, our transparently, and with a lot of people that live in this community, our families worked in industry. Both my parents retired from Shell, and my mom retired from Union Carbide. Our dad used to bring home little plastic pellets when he worked at Shell.
All of his uniform.
So they be plastic everywhere. And it's like, we don't understand that when we're talking about all of these plastics that you're making and like right now there's so much plastic. You get plastic literally wrapped in plastic.
That's right.
Right. And so then it's like, these plastics are killing us.
In the placenta right now.
Yes.
Right.
Born with plastic.
We're being born in plastic, and the way to be in Louisiana and to see the way that it's like marketed, and we know as an industrial family and industrial family culture, the ways in which like the marketing, like here's all the things that we make, here's all the products, that we make right here in your backyard. Wow. And what they don't tell you is the production of those plastics are killing us, right? So just enjoy your scuba gear or whatever.
The production and the recycling of it too. And the recycling of it, that's sold as a false solution, but recycling actually is worse than plastic. It is plastic production. Recycling is plastic production, but sometimes even worse because there's more chemicals that put into that reproducing of that plastic.
Wow. Man, this was phenomenal. I'm gonna turn to my producer. They look content over there. Don't they look content over in the corner? They don't even look like they wanna ask no questions. Oh, but there you go. Tamara, one of our producers, her hand went up to the right. So Tamara.
A little birdie told me that Joe skates like the wind off some roller skates.
What?
At School Show, we care about you as a person, not just you as the climate personality. So could you talk to us about things you do for fun and how you stay grounded?
Let's get to the fun talk.
So that you have something to give when you're not.
Yeah.
Something fun. Well, roller skating, by the way, I hadn't skated for at least 30 years, and we had the opportunity to skate in New York during Climate Week, and I would not pass that up. So I was very brave, and I put those skates on, and I was amazing. I skated for about an hour and a half. I was great. I did not fall one time. It even started raining a little bit. and I was skating in the rain. I had a blast. So I do like skating now. But yeah, and that kind of thing speaks to what I love being outdoors. I love riding bikes. I love just these different things where I can just enjoy the space and being with people. I like that natural connection. And I love thrifting. I really have gotten into going to thrift stores and finding a treasure for $1 and knowing that it still has worth to it. So as we're dealing and I'm addressing disposability, also being able to have fun with reuse and like consider it my little decompression time.
Well, I should have went roller skating with you. I tried to go. So my son ice skate. He's actually going to be. He's actually going pro.
That's amazing.
I know. He's actually going pro. He actually just already signed this contract. And
Oh my God, what team?
he's actually going overseas. He's actually going to Finland and
Wow.
Estonia.
Wow.
I didn't know Estonia was a country until he brought home. So he was going there. But the whole point is, he has those little rollerblades, like the little ice skates where they like roll up, whatever.
That's fun too.
Yeah, it ain't something. So I get out there. So I decided to get out there, one of those things. He said, "No, you can do it." And I remember years ago that I did roller skate. So I figured, okay, man, one leg went left and one leg went right. I pulled a muscle.
Oh, wow.
I had to pull myself, because he was skating around, he couldn't see me. So I was pulling myself in between little kids. A little girl came by. She came
Flying
by.
by.
She said, "Sir, would you like some help?" I said, yes, please. Yes, Lord, please help me out. I just want to get to it. I can pull myself.
One of those strollers that they have for skaters. Well,
See
you
that?
dispelled my myth. When we were in New York, so yeah, I got it there. I was pretty good at skating. Somebody else who had skated for a while, and we were skating, and we had other people asking us like, "Well, how are y'all skating?" And we were like, "It's just like riding a bike. Once you know how to do it, you know how to do it." So other people were like, "No, it's not like riding a bike." And so me and this other person were like, "No, it's real easy for us to do it." So then after we realized, my friend who is black and I'm black, obviously, and we said, "You know what? I think we have unlocked a hidden talent for black people. We know how to skate. It was just natural."
I didn't mess it up.
You messed it up. You messed it up.
You stole our superpower.
I just said black people got a center of gravity that just need to
Know
understand.
how to go with the flow.
It's an allegory for life. There you go.
No, I didn't mess it up. I do want to ask you this as we close out. I do want to ask you, because what people might have heard, that was all our producers are here. We have Cross and Destiny, and that was Tamara, Toza Laughlin, our amazing producers for the Coolest Show. Tamara also does an organization that deals with care repair, climate critical, and it deals with particularly around the issue around particularly black women, and all people, but particularly black women in this movement, taking care of themselves. So I do know, as we know, being here in Cancer Alley and being in this movement, you see some things you actually don't want to see.
All the time.
How do you take care of yourself? Besides going to the woods, besides faith, like when you feeling, and Tamara may know how to better phrase this question. If I'm not phrasing it correctly, she can chime in the best way. But I would assume, how do you do care and repair? That'd be the best way to answer that? Yeah. So how do you do your care and repair to get
We're
through?
working on it.
And when you have...
So for me, the way that I self-soothe, and I don't know if this is a healthy way to do it, but I never, if I can find, if there is a problem, if there's an issue, if I can find a little light at the end of the tunnel, a little path forward, like the next step, I might not have the whole solution. I just need to get, that next path, that next direction, at least where I need to go. But what it means is that when I am really stressed out, as I have been, as we have been, and so many of these different cases and so many things that happen, then I will be very aggressive about finding what that next step is so that I can feel soothed. And so I don't think that is the healthiest thing for me to do, because it tires me out. And I'm not really processing the emotion of fear that we sort of live in. So I admittedly, my phone, my emails go straight to my phone. I get notifications. And if people email or if someone sees some crazy thing on Facebook said about us, and there's been some crazy things. And it's 9 o'clock at night. Like my phone is on and I see it and my whole night is messed up. So I will say that my self-care, I have a Pomeranian who's terrible, but I do love my little baby. And I'm a screenwriter too, so that's one of the things that I do, trying to channel that into writing about real historical Black figures who were resistance fighters and who were fighting for their freedom. So that's somewhat trying to channel like what the ancestors went through, or even our elders, like even my parents, like what they went through Jim Crow. But that's a long way of saying that I'm not doing really enough.
When you end with Jim Crow as your relaxation, maybe
Yeah,
you
I mean,
need some
that
help.
helps. That's a clue.
Maybe you need some help.
Now it was Jim Beam. Jim Beam did it.
Any other Jim Crow?
No
Maybe
Jim,
you
no
need
Jim
to
Crow.
rethink some things about your life.
She said when you're editing on Jim Crow, you definitely need some relaxation. That's too funny.
Well, we always use sarcasm. That's one of
No,
the
if you don't laugh.
We watched a lot of Golden Girls when we were younger, and so that Dorothy taught us so much about like sarcasm. Yes. So we can be sarcastic annoyingly at a lot of stuff. But, yeah.
I would say this, and this is something that I haven't said recently. I was on a podcast. It's called Fatherhoods. And on that podcast, I was talking about I had to raise my kids by myself. A lot of people didn't know that. Shout out to the caucus team for years who would just help me to almost co-parent. Like they literally was either through my aunts, my moms, and then some of the staff would help me, literally would help me in an amazing, get me to places, get me back. But what's interesting, my son River just graduated, and I told that story. My mom heard the podcast. Her mom said, my mom, who's also a psychologist, so it's Dr. Yearwood on her side, she said to me, I didn't heard it before, she says, I'm so glad you're finally telling your truth. And I was like, me? I always tell my truth. He says, no, you tell your truth, but you sound like for the first time you're telling your truth like it doesn't hurt. You've always said your truth, and you say your truth, but you can hear the pain.
Yep.
And so I think for many of us in this movement, we tell our truth, but with pain.
Yep.
And we don't know how to get over to the other side. And then we pass that on because generations come and think, well, the only way you do this work is that you gotta be tough and strong. And you can't
resilient.
And resilient. And you hear that, oh yeah, and you can't, and nobody's going, if somebody cuts you, you go get them. And that's not true.
Not true.
This is hard. And it's not easy. And I know the toll it takes, not only on me, but on my kids and on people around me. So I know even for you, because you're twins, I know if one is hurting, the other one, or if one feels good, it's likewise. But I think that more people need to understand that in this movement, the best thing you could be is human.
Right. Yeah, it's so powerful that you say that, because I feel in this movement is that, especially as Black women, we either are deified or we're demonized. But no one is there on our level just seeing us as just people. We're treated as, oh, you're a queen, or we're praised when we're strong enough to get on those panels and speak our truth about our communities, or we're drug in the mud because we're speaking out too much. But very rarely do we have someone who's like, you know what, we just had a panel, or let's go get a drink. Let's go in, and what are you doing? Let's go watch a movie. And like you said, those self-care moments where we could have that time, so many people disengage from that, including ourselves. So I've just been, I've had two experiences where I was really praised a lot, and this week I had one where I was dragged through the mud and really not feeling seen in both those situations. But then someone this week also just gifted us, Joy and I, tickets to a garden party, and they invited us because we're like, your cousin, Grow That Farms in New Orleans. Our cousin was one of the chefs, and she made the connection. She's like, you know what, Joy and Joy, I know your cousin is here, and we like you, but we think maybe, how about you come and see your cousin? And I felt so seen in that moment, because that was just someone said, y'all are from Wireless, and she's here, and come out. And I didn't even know that. But that just, and the name of the dinner, the theme of it was See and Be Seen. And it just hit me in that moment how much that the Grow Dad staff saw us in that moment, in the moment where when I was going through that. So it just makes me realize exactly what you say, what can be done to humanize us.
And you also had a great moment recently. Y'all, I heard, this could be put out there, the National Registry, right? Can that be public? Can that be?
Yeah, the National Park Service believes that we are that 11 miles on the west bank of almost the last 11 miles that doesn't have heavy industry is a good candidate for a national historic landmark.
Oh, man.
And the beautiful context study that was written on our area uplifts so much of the Black experience, antebellum, but then post-slavery, what our communities did to stay together and create these beautiful communities along the river, and which is just, it celebrates those of us who stayed. Not that it's wrong for people who left, but I think people always say, why did y'all stay? And in this beautiful study that the National Park Service did, it was like, this is historical because these are the people who stayed in all of it. So just really, just my heart is full to.
Yeah.
We just found out a few hours ago, so it's really new to us.
That's new. We breaking news.
Yeah, National Historic Landmark.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, when I first met y'all, the first thing y'all told me was that y'all were avid listeners of The Coolest Show. And that just blessed my heart. I'm sure it blessed the producer's heart. First thing you said to me, oh, The Coolest Show.
Yeah.
We listen to that. So thank you. So I want to make sure, how can people support the Descendents Project? How people can support the Woodland Plantation? How do we support you in your work and from all these different fights you're engaged in right now?
Yeah, so first, our website is thedescendentsproject.org. We're on Facebook and Instagram at the Descendents Project. You can follow us there. We really appreciate when we, post petitions or post movements or that you share. But then, also what I ask, former professor and me coming out is when you hear these stories, and there's so much of it, but especially in Cancer Alley, if you take any of the resources, the articles, information that we have posted on our website, and if you just take a good 30 minutes to really read and absorb the material and think about if there's anybody in your network, any way that you could help support our community in that fight. And maybe it's just sharing it with your network, which is fine. But just really, again, I just ask for people to bring more visibility for us that are fighting on the front lines. That really it was really important to us.
Joe, any last words?
We just appreciate the support that we've had so far. We never imagined when we came up, when our ancestors called us to start the Descendents Project and we listened to them finally, that we would be in this space. I have to tell the truth. But we never imagined that we would be here. We never imagined that Black women just wanting to tell their history and also shape their future would be so revolutionary, but here we are. It's unfortunately, it is a revolutionary idea in 2024, but even through that, the fact that we are still here, I think about the rebellion and the resistance and feeling like Charles DeLon and our ancestors, we could say it as a loss. It's like, no, they didn't lose because here we are. We're still fighting. We're still fighting. So here we are, and just understanding that the fight is still going and we're here. We're blessed to be here, and we are not here alone. It's through the help of our community members, the advocates, the allies who are funding us and keep funding us to build our capacity. This is a big fight.
And
but
you all,
and you all,
your
Rev,
support.
you were here right after Hurricane Ida. I never forget that, and we had tons of
from the very beginning,
supplies,
very early on in our
tree branches still in the yard that we needed to pick up from the storm.
Shout out to the caucus and what they do.
Yeah, thank you for your work.
For their work around Hurricane Ida. I just want to say thank you. And when I've been around you, I've been able to kind of see you when you don't see me watching y'all in different settings. And y'all make us proud. Don't let nobody steal that joy. Please don't let nobody steal that joy. Y'all are definitely representing us and doing it in fine fashion. And for those ancestors, I can't speak for them, obviously, but I can imagine you and us in this house, knowing all that could have gone down in this house. Mm-hmm. The pain and the trauma. For us to sit here now, I say, go ahead, baby.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And on the Coolest Show.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. And that's it. And I am your host, Rev Yearwood, and this is the Coolest Show.